This computer. Okay. Welcome to chapter Memtes, Kapitel Memtes, Kapitel 49. Chapter 49. Chapter 49. Let's go through it once with a basic translation. Lamnatzech for the conductor. Livnei Kairach, the children of Kairach. Mizmor, a song. Shimu Zeis Kolamim. All the nations listen to this. Ha'azinu. Listen, Kol Yoshvei Chaled, all the inhabitants of Chaled, the world. Gam Bnei Adam, Gam Bnei Ish, the people referred to as Adam, people referred to as Ish, Yachad, together, Ashir ve'Evyain, poor and rich. Pi Yedaber Chachmes, my mouth is going to speak wisdom, Chachma. Ve'hagus libi sevunais, and the thoughts of my hearts is understanding. Ata l'mashal ozni, I will incline, I will turn my ear in to listen. Eftach bechiner chidasi, I will start my riddle with a harp. Lama ira bimeira, why should I be afraid in bad days? Avoin akeva yisubeini, the sins of my akev, of my heel, is what scares me, or what surrounds me, really. Yisubeini is more than what surrounds me. Habaytchim al chelam, those who rely, put their trust in their wealth, uvreiv ashra misalalu, and boast about their great wealth. Ach leifada yifteish, this person cannot even redeem another man, can't even redeem his brother. Lo yitin lilim kafrei, and can't even pay a ransom to Hashem. V'yekar pidyon nafsham, and the redemption of their soul is too expensive, from the word yakar, very expensive. V'chad alaylam, and you'll never get there. You'll never be able to attain that. You'll never be able to redeem your soul. V'yechi oid lanetzach, are you going to live forever? V'lo yira shachas, without seeing shachas, the grave. When you see that the wise ones die, and there's the fool and the senseless that also yevedu, it's not just dying, yamusu is dying, yevedu is getting lost. Here he translates it, the word with perish, but it's more like they disappeared. We don't hear anything about them. Yevedu, they're gone, they're lost. We'll talk about the difference between the two on the second round. And they leave their wealth to others. Kirbam, inside, they think, kirbam, inside their heads, they think that their house will go on forever. Mishkanaisam, also their house, the place where they live, lidar vadar, will continue for generation after generation. Karu bishmaisam, they call it after, they give it names, they give their houses their names, alei adames, throughout the lands. Adam, but a person, a man, Adam, a person, man is in the general term of humans. Bikar Bal Yalin will not live through that glory. Nimshal is likened kabehemais, like animals, nidmu, that have been quieted, that have been silenced. And zedarkam, this is their way. Kesel lamai, that they stay with the kesel, they stay with this folly, with the lack of understanding. And their descendants after them, the fiyem yirtzu, with their mouth they approve. Selah. Katzayin lishoil, that they go like sheep to the shoil, which means to the depths. Over here it probably means to the grave. Shatu maves yireim, that they get shepherded towards their death. The yirdu bam yesharim, and the upright will dominate afterwards. Labayker, at morning. Vitzuram, and their form levales mishel, will rot in the grave. Mizvulai, away from the abode, its abode. Ach elikim, but Hashem yifta nafshi, will redeem my soul. Miyad sha'el, from sha'el, which means the depths. Ki kacheni selah, for he will take me. Selah. Al tira ki ashirish. Do not fear when you see a person becoming wealthy. Ki yira bekveit beisai, when his house and his honor, or the honor of his house grows and becomes bigger. Because in his death, when he dies, he can't take anything. And the honor also won't descend after him. For him, for his soul, in his lifetime, he praises his soul in his lifetime. But but they will praise you if you become toiv, when you become better. Tavai, ultimately he will come to the generation of the previous generations. He'll see the previous generations that they'll never see the light for eternity. And Adam was yakar, glory, but valuable. Adam biyakar, but he doesn't understand. Nimshal kabeim nidmo is likened to animals that have been silenced. This is in Philip, you were reading the poem before. This is written very poetic. I had some trouble with the translation of this chapter. The main reason I had trouble with the translation of this chapter is because I like a good English translation that might even add a little bit to understand. Put in a but, put in an and, not to go into elucidation, but just to make it flow a little bit better. So yeah, that's the translation that I like to use. But as I mentioned, this chapter is read very, very often in Shiva houses. It's actually our custom that we read it twice a day in Shiva house. Some even read it at a funeral, this chapter of Tehillim. As you could see, it's very obvious why. It's a message to those that are still around. Focus on what's important, which is basically what we're going to be talking about here in this chapter. But the translation that I always use, the books from Papermans, they have a very, thou type of, the flowery English. I don't know what it's called, the English that they use. Anyways, it's flowery English, and it's a whole different flow to the English. And so I was having trouble because I know the chapter very well, and I've said it, chanted it in English many, 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 many times. It was different. Anyways, it's a very powerful chapter, and the truth is, as I was going through the Mefarshim for this chapter, I realized that going too deep in this chapter makes you miss the point. And I tried to stay very much. I didn't go away from the psukim. Tried to make sure that we understand the psukim, but the pshat of the psukim. No, we're not bringing no alshich this week. There's no this. It's very basic. It's a very powerful in its pshat level, and I think it's very, very important that we learn it in that way. And I don't have a lot to say, but the psukim really talk for themselves very, very, very much. And I think this is and that's the way we're going to go with this chapter this time. So let's the couple of lines on top of the chapter, it says like this: this psalm is a strong message and inspiration for all, rich and poor alike, rebuking man for transgressions which, owing to habit, he no longer considers sinful, yet these sins incriminate man on the day of judgment. This psalm speaks specifically to the wealthy who rely not on God but on their wealth. So it's a good summation of what this chapter is really saying. And it starts off Lamatzeach by the conductor. If I remember, this is the last one that we have of Bnei Kairach. This is the final one of Bnei Kairach. We're finished with the Bnei Kairach afterwards. We actually finish today. We finish after chapter 50. We finish, Shlomo is taking him, and I told him if he really needs anything, he should call you. If he calls me, that means it's very important, and I will answer. If you give me some salsa, please. So this is the final one of the Bnei Kairach. We're almost a third through Tehillim. Tehillim is 150 chapters. We are doing chapter 49, so we're almost a third through Tehillim. After chapter 50, we finish day 2. Day 2 of there's different ways you could say Tehillim. You could say Tehillim by the day of the month, and that's the Chabad custom and Chitas that we say Tehillim when we finish it once a month. But there's also another way that you could say Tehillim and finish the whole Tehillim. You could finish the whole Tehillim in a week, and it's divided up into the days. As if you see, so today's Yom Sheni, also through chapter 50 is Yom Sheni. Chapter 51 already starts Yom Shlishi for Tuesday, so it's also the end of a like subject matter almost. But in our context, what I was trying to bring out is that it's the final chapter that is attributed to the Bnei Korach, to the sons of Korach, that they said that we talked about already quite a few chapters ago. I think 10, 15 chapters ago, we talked about that they said with different opinions of how it came about. Now, the Meiri says that the point of this chapter of Tehillim, the point of this psalm, is to arouse a person to do tshuva. Tshuva and maisim taivim. Tshuva means to reconnect. Tshuva is to return to Hashem, to connect again to Hashem. Tshuva can mean many, many things, but on a basic level, tshuva is recognizing that I'm not in a good place in my relationship with God, and I want to be closer. So tashuv, I return to Hashem. That's the basic idea of tshuva. But there's two things. There's also maisim taivim, good deeds, which you could, in other words, mitzvahs. And that's a connection to Hashem. That's a way we connect to Hashem. That's a tshuva and maisim taivim. Now, a person might be so busy with their worldly affairs, they're busy with everything that's going on in their life, and they don't recognize that they have to do tshuva, or that they have an opportunity to do a mitzvah and they miss out on that opportunity to do a mitzvah. So comes this chapter of Tehillim and reminds us what's important in life, focusing on how this world is. In Hebrew, we say hevel avalim. The world is, it's not so important. Everything, it's funny. It's things that we worried so much about 10 years ago. Think about something that really kept you up at night 10 years ago. Today, when you look back at it, what was it? Or the person that you got into an argument with 10 years ago. So you look back now, you say, really, it was nothing. It was stupid. It was, right? In the moment, it's the whole world. To recognize that the world is hevel avalim. When I was thinking about this line, the story, Philip, that you told me, you said, shtickle fleish. That's what the world is. Shtickle fleish. That's it. We don't get too excited about this world, or in the psalm, it puts it more about financial. It puts about the rich. Obviously, we're talking about the rich that don't do any mitzvahs, that don't give tzedakah, meaning if Hashem gave you wealth, there's a reason. The reason is that you should be able to support your family and then continue and support people, the community, etc. That's someone that doesn't do that. So a person could say, oh my gosh, this guy's very wealthy and I wish I was like him. Not so much. And that's what the chapter is coming to talk about. Not so much to run after money. And in the long term, money doesn't help. It could help you in the short term. My brother once told me a story. He says he went over to a wealthy Lubavitcher. My brother's the kind of guy that he'll drive someone a shtickle crazy. So he went over to him and said, everybody else is afraid to talk. He's a very wealthy man, afraid to even go over to him, even as a Rajim. My brother Dafka walked over to him. So he walks over to him and says, no, so tell me, does wealth make you happy? So he looks at him in typical Chabad style and he says, no, but it helps. It was like, guys, found it to be a fascinating answer. It's like, it's verstanden in Indian, right? Meaning, wealth, is that the ultimate? No. But if you use wealth in the proper way, meaning you do what Hashem wants you to do with it, so of course it's going to make you happy. If you get, whether it's tzedakah, whether it's having doing mitzvahs, because at the end of the day, being Jewish, doing mitzvahs ain't cheap. It's expensive. It's not a cheap thing. Shabbos, you got to run and get the best food for Shabbos. Yom Tov comes, there's always something special for Yom Tov that's going to cost you. A little of an esrog is going to cost you. A menorah is going to cost you. Everything's, the comment is Shveitz Zayin Yid, I think, came from the fact that it's expensive to be a Jew. It's not a cheap thing. A Jew is, Hashem has to provide for us, Taka, that we should be able to do whatever we need to do, and Hashem does. And if you go with that attitude, you're going to have what you need. But at the end of the day, should recognize that's not the focus, because in the long term, that's not what's going to help you in life. We should focus on the things that actually have meaning today, but also tomorrow. And when I say tomorrow, I mean after 120. What does it mean? That there's things that are valuable today. So money is valuable to me today because I could buy something with it, right? I could do something with that money. But tomorrow, after 120, it has no value to me. A mitzvah that I do today is valuable today and valuable tomorrow. And it's ultimately valuable forever. And that's the message of this chapter of the chapter of Tehillim. And the Svarnu brings it up. He says simply, he says this chapter of Tehillim shows you the difference and the value that comes from efforts that you put into the study of Torah and doing mitzvahs, meaning Torah, Ma'asem Tovim, Torah and good deeds, versus the effort that goes into, as the terms that they use a lot over here is gathering money, meaning running after the almighty dollar, right? Running after another dollar, another dollar, another dollar. Now, chas v'shalom, we're not saying that a person should just sit and learn Torah a whole day and just do mitzvahs a whole day. That's not what this chapter of Tehillim is saying at all. He's saying that what's the focus in someone's life? What's the goal of this person's life? Of course, a person has to go out and make a living, and they have to provide for their family. They have to do what they need to do, and they have to be involved in the world. They have to be people of the world, but know what's important. When you're a person of the world and you recognize, but what's important is my Judaism, is when, what excites me? What excites me today? What excites me today? It excites me today that it's Zeis Chanukah, that we're just barely at the end of Chanukah, like they just finished Chanukah, that's exciting. And the next Yom Tov that's coming, whether it's Tu B'Shvat or the Chassidish Yom Tov of Hey Tevis that's coming, what excites me, right? Or exciting, I just closed another deal or another, that's the question. Of course, you have to close another deal and you have to make a lot of money because Chabad needs a lot of money. But you have to make money. You have to provide it. But that's not what is exciting. What's exciting in life? Exciting in life is Torah and mitzvahs. That's the message of this Tehillim. Yeah. Okay. Pasuk number 2. So Shimbo Zayis Kol Ha'amim. So this message, this message is for everybody. And this is what Rashi comes and says. It's a universal message. Kol Ha'amim. It's very unique that you have a proclamation over here, and it's not, the proclamation is not that my close people should listen, or the Jewish people should listen, etc., etc. No, Kol Ha'amim. This is a universal message. This is a message of Judaism that is universal, that everybody should listen to. Everybody should recognize this. And that's why it mentions Kol Ha'amim, Hazinu Kol Yesh V'Chalad. All the inhabitants of the world should listen to the message of this psalm. Pasuk number 3, it says, Gam b'nei Adam, Gam b'nei Ish. Translation that I'm sitting in front of, it says the common folk and nobility. So that's one way to look at it. You can talk about the regular people and also people of status. Rashi comes here and says the children of Avram or the children of Noach, because children of Avram, he brings a proof that's called Gam b'nei Adam, and Gam b'nei Ish, it says Noach Ish Tzadik. So the descendants of Noach, meaning everybody else in the world, are the descendants of Noach. So we're talking about Gam b'nei Adam, Gam b'nei Ish, whether you're talking about the Jewish people or the non-Jewish people, right? The previous pasuk, there's a lot of repetition, by the way, in this chapter. The previous pasuk says, Shimon says, Kol Ha'amim, all nations, and he repeats himself, Gam b'nei Adam, whether you're Jewish or you're not Jewish. This has a message to you, Yachad, Ashir, Ve'evyain, right? And rich or poor, and he says Yachad. The Mitzvah says, what does he mean by Yachad? Yachad means that everybody's equal. When it comes to this message, everybody's equal, whether you're rich, whether you're poor. That it says clearly, whether you're Jewish, whether you're not Jewish. Doesn't matter what status you're on. This message is a message for all. And then he continues, and he says, Pi Yedaber Chachmes, pasuk number 4, my mouth will talk wisdom, and V'hagos libi svunos. And there's special things, there's hidden things in my heart. Rashi says, what is hagos libi svunos? He says that in my heart I have thoughts. My thoughts are in my heart, meaning that there's more than what I'm just gonna say. I'm gonna talk over here. I'm gonna say something. It's a short chapter. I mean, it's not a very short chapter. Ish means a person. Ish means man. And I have thoughts in my heart, so you should know that not everything I'm putting pen to paper over here. Not everything is going to make it into this chapter. It's 21 psukim. It's not going to make all of it. So there's more to say about this. You can bring for a long time about this chapter of Tehillim. And that's what he says. That's what Rashi says. The Hagos Libis is that there's more in my heart, meaning there's more thoughts about this. The Metzudas adds that besides the things that I'm going to speak, right? P. Yedaber chachmes. My mouth will utter wisdoms. My mouth will say things of chachma. Will say Jewish wisdom over here that he's going to share in a moment, right? So besides the things that I'm actually going to say with my mouth that I'm going to speak, there are other things that I think they're hidden in my heart. There is something deeper. Not just everything is in this chapter of Tehillim. That's the pasuk number 4. Pasuk number 5. Ata l'mashal azni. I love this pasuk, and some of you have heard this vart from me. It's not my vart. It's a vart that's been said over and over. That's what does it mean? Ata. He says, I will turn my ear in. What do you mean? The author of the psalm is saying, I'm going to tell you words of wisdom, and then he says, I'm going to put my ear. What does it mean? So as you know, so the Metzudas right away comes and says, no. I'm also going to tune into what I have to say. This chachma, this is something, it's a lifelong work. This is not something that you're going to say, okay, I know it and I'm good. No, this is a lifelong process, because one day you're successful. One day you wake up and you're not running after the almighty dollar. One day you're running after it, but with cup, you understand that it's not the whole world. The world doesn't run around all the, there's something more important in the world, etc. There's better things in the world. But the point is that I'm not only talking to you, says the Metzudas explains, but I'm not only talking to you, I'm listening as well. We say very often by a Farbrengen, right? I'm talking to myself. If you want, you could listen in. There's a famous story of Reb Zusha, right? Everybody knows Reb Zusha of Anipoli, the famous chassid, famous rebel in his own right. And when he wanted to, they say that when he wanted to rebuke somebody, so he would go and sit down next to him, sit down next to the guy and say, oh, and talk out loud, but talking to himself. And he would say, oi, Reb Zusha made a mistake. Reb Zusha, and he would say what this guy did, right? Reb Zusha made a mistake and he did this. Reb Zusha erred and he's going to do tshuva in this way. And the other guy listens, says, Reb Zusha made this mistake and he's going to go do tshuva. I better go and do tshuva, right? But this is atel mashav. Talk to yourself. You have to, you can't inspire somebody else if you can't inspire yourself. So you have to be talking to yourself. And in general, whenever it comes to these things, you have to, you want to really have a good Farbrengen. The mashpia has to make sure that he's talking something that he could relate to, talking something that he's talking to himself, and then he could connect to other people. And that's what the way the Metzudas explains this chapter, and specifically in pasuk pasuk number 5, that the psalmist is saying, I'm listening. I need to hear this. I'm talking to myself. And anybody who wants to listen, Kol Ha'amim, all the nations should also listen. But I need this message too. This is a very unique thing. It's a special thing in Yiddishkeit. It's a special thing in Judaism. Maybe I don't know so much about other religions, but if I could venture to say, different than other religions, that Judaism is do as I do, not do as I say, right? It's not we experience, we do Judaism. You see, your rabbi has to be doing what he preaches, right? Otherwise, it's must for a rabbi, right? Of course, and that's what rabbis do. So it's all about me doing, not just talking and saying you should do this. You should really be doing this. No, I'm doing it, and by extension, we hope to inspire others to do it. And the Metzudas goes on, he says, after the end of the pasuk, says that it's easier to the whole chapter is written in riddle form, and it's easier to unravel this riddle with playing it on a harp. Harp and music inspires a person to do good. Music in general is a positive thing, and especially harp music that comes from a harp. And it says that it says that through the music that's used on a harp, it will inspire a person to do good and stay away from the negativity. Pasuk number 6. Lama ira b'yimeira. That why should I be afraid of Yemeira? So what's Yemeira? Yemeira is bad times or trouble times. That's the literal translation. So why should I be afraid of bad times? So Rashi says, Avoina keva yisubeni, because there are certain sins. This is brought up in another pasuk of Tehillim, that there are certain sins that I think they're small. I think they're not important. These things are, so I'm not going to focus on this so much. And so I trample on them. There's small things, and I trample on them. Avoina keva, the sins that I trample on with my heel, Yisubeni, those are going to come back to bite me. Those are going to come back and go up against me. So therefore, ira. So the David HaMelech says, or the psalmist says, that I'm afraid for a bad time, for a troubled time, because there's some sins that I thought were not so important, and I trampled on them. The Sfarnu says that he's worried about sins that Yemeira, he translates not as troubled times, but as end of life. Yemeira, the end of life. So if I do something wrong earlier in life, I always have the opportunity to do tshuva. But if I do something wrong, if I do something wrong so if I do something wrong earlier in my life, I could do tshuva. I have the opportunity to do tshuva. But what if I did something that I didn't have the opportunity to do tshuva, meaning at the end of my life, just before I pass away? So those sins might do me in, and that's what he's referring to. So that's the way that Sfarnu explains.
Rav Label.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question. So in other words, why should I fear in time of trouble? It's a rhetorical question. It's actually, I should fear in time of trouble.
Right.
Okay, that's what because it could be said, why should I fear? I have nothing to fear. No, it's not that. I should fear in time of trouble because my ultimate iniquity.
Reason. Yeah.
And that's the answer.
Right. He says, why should I fear? I should fear because. Right? A person might say, why should I fear? Here, let me tell you why you should fear. That's what he tells. Yeah. And then, right? And then he continues, so now, so the psalmist is saying, David HaMelech is saying that, why should I be afraid? Well, let me tell you, there's a reason. Yeah, maybe I didn't have the opportunity to fix all my wrongs, right? But then he says, but then there's others. Then we have these other people, and this is what he's going to start talking about, the chachmas that he's going to talk about now. He says, there's others, but then there's others that rely on their wealth, and they glorify themselves with their great wealth. Now, these people, right? So Rashi says that he's switching gears over here. So it says, on the other hand, there's those that rely on their great wealth. And then he continues, and that's the next pasuk, it doesn't help them, right? So we're going to get to the next pasuk in a moment. The Mitzvah says also that on the other hand, there's other people that rely on their wealth, and they have a lot more sins because they didn't care about sin. It says, at least, and we're going to get back to this point. The pasuk number 6 says, why should I worry? Because I might have inadvertent sins that I didn't fix, I didn't correct, right? It says, but there's others, the ones that the ones who rely on their great wealth, they have a lot more to worry about because they never cared about a sin. Not just the small sins that they trample on, so to speak, with their heels, as was mentioned. On the contrary, they have other sins that they never cared about, right? So those people have a lot more to worry about, and that's the way the Metzudas explains it. And the Radak says simply that I'm not like, that he continues, says, I'm not like Habayit Chemal Chelam. I'm not like those who rely on their wealth. But why is it stupid to rely on your wealth? Pasuk number 8, because a person was never able to redeem another person, not even his brother. Yeah, it comes the time to die. Hashem decides when it is. There's nothing you could do about it. There's nothing you could do about it. You can spend all the money in the world, all the best doctors in the world, right? If Hashem decides that this person is going to live, You could spend nothing and everything will be okay, or you could do your part and everything will be okay, right? Of course, we're not saying not to go to doctors and not if that's what's needed. So that's what we have to do. We have to create a version in the physical world for Hashem's blessing. So therefore, we go to doctors and we go listen to doctors and we do what we need to do, 100%. That's part of the process. But if Hashem decides that today's the day, and there's nothing I could do to save even my brother. And that's what he says. You never found that a person was able to say, hold on a second. Yeah, I'm a billionaire, so I could save my brother. No, it never happened. And not only that, you can't pay a ransom to Hashem for your life. You can't say, you know what, I'll exchange it. I'll give the value to it. The Metzudah says that what he's saying over here in the pasuk, he says, "What kind of seichel do you have?" And Metzudah gets a. So what you're a shaita. He's like he uses the word sichlus, that you're foolish. He says the previous pasuk says those who rely on their wealth. That's foolish because it won't even help you. It's foolish to rely on your wealth. You can't save anyone, right? And the Metzudah says at the end of the pasuk that you can't give even the value. It's a foolishness to rely on your wealth. That's the pasuk. Not only that, the next pasuk says v'yeker pidin nafsham, and now he switches. Now he's not talking about life. Now he's talking about nefesh. Now he's talking about the soul. Right? What happens if day in, day out, all you care is about making another dollar and you have no time for Shabbos, and you have no time to learn Torah, you have no time to do a mitzvah, you have no time to give tzedakah, you have no time to do anything, right? And all you do is running after all the almighty dollar, right? What happens? What's for neshama? You lost your soul, you right? And what happens? There's no redeeming that soul. The yekar pidyon nafsham. Pidyon means redemption. So to redeem your nefesh, your soul, yekar, it's too expensive at this point. As much money as you don't have, there's nothing that you could do to redeem your soul, no matter how rich you are. And it's unattainable to redeem your soul. And then the pasuk continues and says, and it continues, describing the fallacy of relying on money. It says, did anybody live forever? So I told you, like the chapter really grows on itself. Have you ever seen someone that lived forever? It's not possible. And lo yira shachas, that never saw the grave. Never happened. There's no such thing. Right? So, and there's been wealthy people. It's not like, there's been wealthy people, there's been people that tried. It's a modern day scientific discussion about people investing and living extra long in different things, they have nothing yet, but there's a discussion. Why? Because people think that with my money, I'll be able to buy extra years. Comes this pasuk and tells you no. And not only that, comes Corona and tells you no. Comes something else. Yeah, as much as we have such advances in medical sciences, and we do, it's unbelievable today. For in certain areas of medicine, the advances that they have, when it comes to issues of the heart and other things, that they mamish have unbelievable advances. That it's something that 20, 30 years ago was a death sentence. Today, a person lives a normal life with such a thing, with different advances in medicine. All that to be said, we have no guarantees. Money's not going to buy you extra life. And as soon as the world thought that they were on the cusp of a breakthrough like that, comes COVID and shows that we're not in control. The Eibishter is in control. The Eibishter is in control, so he should bring an end to this pandemic, and we should be able to live a good life, and we should be able to live a good life, so that way we could learn Torah and we could do mitzvahs without worrying and without thinking what's going to be next, etc., etc. But that's a whole different discussion. But the pasuk number 10. The Metzudah says that the pasuk is saying that even if you are going to live a long life, you're going to live forever. Yeah, is it possible never to see the grave? Meaning, what's the whole thing? What are the psukim over here telling you? That there is a that a person shouldn't rely on his wealth. Why? Because that has a short term, that has an expiry date. And when a person passes away, he can't take it with him, right? So now, but maybe someone's going to live a long life and he'll still be able to appreciate his money for a long time. But still, that person ultimately also sees the grave. So why such trust in money? There's other things that we could do that will live beyond our years, that will live past us, that will be with us even after, that we do, quote unquote, take with us to the grave. So he said, do you ever see anybody that lives forever? No. Number 11, even the wise people, the great scientists and the great doctors, etc., even them, they die. And together with the ksil vavar, together with the fools and the senseless people and the ones that don't have seichel, right? They all ultimately pass away. And what happens to their great wealth? It's really, it gives over to somebody else. They don't take it with them. It's left for somebody else. Rashi says that when he says chachamim yamusu, it's interesting. He says chachamim yamusu, but ksil, so wise die, ksil perish, he translates over here. But yovedu means that they disappear, that we know nothing about them after they pass away. And Rashi says, because the wise, at least they leave something over for the next generation. The wise, they taught somebody something. They gave something to the next generation. So they'll be remembered. The Rashi says, we're talking about chachamim, talking about the sages, that when they pass away, their neshama lives on, what they gave to the world lives on. But when we talk about the foolish, they're lost forever. What are you going to remember? The guy enjoyed this guy. He enjoyed a good steak. That's what you're going to remember about a person. You remember that for 10 seconds and it's over. It's always actually something that bothers me. Sometimes you sit by a funeral and the family gets up to talk about, yeah, he loved to eat. He loved to eat. Any restaurant, that's what you're going to talk about. It's something that it actually gives. I cringe when they say that. People, it's not their fault. They don't even realize. Right? This is the next generation just continuing what the previous generation did, and that's what the pasuk even talks about this. That the next generation, hey, it's not their fault. This is what their parents cared about. This is what their grandparents cared about, or something like that. And then it goes on to the next generation.
That's the sheep.
It's the sheep. Exactly.
Sheep follow each other.
Right. Now we have to take a moment and listen. At the others, turn your ear. Listen to the chachma over here. Listen to the chachma. So the Sforno says, whether wise or foolish, when a person all he cares about is amassing, all he cares about is amassing wealth, that you leave to others. That never stays by you. Never stays by your name. Never stays by you. And today you have people everywhere trying to figure out how they're going to live an extra year. How they're going to make the life that you're living today, make it valuable. That even after 120, someone will say, oh, such a person, I remember them, right? How many times we had people that participated in the class that have passed away? It comes to mind Ernest Schupak, right? Right? He had an effect. Who talks about Ernest Schupak? His family talks about him, and we talk about him. Why? Because he had an effect in our classes. He had an effect. We remember him afterwards, not for the food, not for even the things that he said, because he was a very quiet person, right? But when he spoke or when he wrote something, it was like, wow, that's what lasts to the next generation. That's the uniqueness. That's what Taita Maisim Taita. Pasuk number 12. Kirbam, inside they think that their houses or their estates, that's going to last for generations. That's what's going to go on for generations. And they give names. It's a funny thing. The pasuk even says they give their estate, they give it a name. They think that that's what's going to make it last forever, right? So this is what Rashi explains it. That nonetheless, in their thoughts, they think they're going to build something that's going to last forever, and they name them after themselves, and they think that through that the memory will live on. Pasuk 13.
No, but wait a minute. And they name lands after themselves. Now you're talking already about kings, conquerors.
Right.
They can name a whole land after themselves. You understand? He's not only rich. He doesn't only have a fantastic house and a fantastic this. No, but he's Nebuchadnezzar. He's Sancherib. Hey. what happened to
Yeah,
them?
they actually, it's interesting that you brought that up. I didn't necessarily bring it up, but Rashi mentions, he brings one example. And the example is Antiochus. We're just coming from Hanukkah,
Yeah,
right? What did he tried to rename Yerushalayim to Antiochus, like after his name.
right.
And he was going to invest. He was going to put money into it. He was going to beautify Yerushalayim, but he also wanted it to be under Greek culture, etc. And that was the problem, and that's why the Maccabees went and fought him, etc. Right? But yes, that's it. Naming lands, like renaming Yerushalayim. The legacy that I'm going to have. What legacy? The legacy that he has is that we eat donuts for 8 days and we light them at night. The legacy that every Jewish child, every Jewish child knows Antiochus, even as a kid of knowledge that's not in a Jewish school, knows the name Antiochus, can pronounce it and say he was a bad man. That's the legacy of a Rasha, of someone that all he cares about is, what's with the value and not good deeds, Torah and mitzvahs, which is Torah and good deeds. Pasuk 13, a person will not, by Yalin means, go into the grave. Yalin means to sleep, but I think it means long-term sleep. It won't be in glory. Nimshal kabeim is nidmu. It's like, and like Philip, you mentioned, like the sheep, they just follow each other. Quiet, not going to say a word. I'm following what the other person, that this person is running after money, so I want to be like him. I think that's where the glory is, etc. And they follow that. That's the way that Radak says that when a person passes away, Yalin, when a person passes away, he doesn't take his yikar, he doesn't take his wealth with him. And so then what is he going to be? He's going to be like a quiet animal. And the Malbim says that if you don't plan to take with you after 120 things of value, what's things of value for after 120? The good deeds that you've done in your lifetime, the Torah learning that you've done in your lifetime. That's the value that you take with you after 120. So then you're going to be like a quiet animal that's going to pass away. Not that, on the contrary, by the way, it's funny, when I was learning the kapitel the first time, I said it's funny that he's comparing to an animal. On the contrary, in such a case, an animal's better than him. Animal at least is doing what Hashem wants. An animal is following, is doing what he or she was created to do here in this world. The human has got to do, and he doesn't do. So, and then the pasuk continues, Zed Arkom. This is their way. This is the way of the foolish. Kesa Lamai, that the foolishness stays with them, va'achareyem, and their descendants. Talk about the next generation. V'fiyam yirtzu. That's like it's a sad thing that the next generation, their descendants, they talk about b'fiyam. Willingly they say, oh, the previous generation, oh, how nice, they made money, this guy made money, this guy made money, this guy was good, this guy did this, and I wish I could be like this one, and I wish I could be like that one, right? Instead of focusing, this guy learned Torah, this guy did mitzvahs, this guy made money, but he gave tzedakah. Now you're talking, now you're saying something positive, right? But they don't recognize, they're not listening to the wisdom of this chapter, and they just repeat things, this idle type of talk. So that's pasuk 14. And Rashi says simply that the next generation speaks of the earlier generations. The Radak adds that they just speak of the previous generation's wealth and not about the real good deeds that previous generations have done. And it's a funny thing because sometimes you have Taka people that did amazing things, but the next generation doesn't recognize it. They only recognize the shtickle fleish that they ate, right? They don't recognize the good things that they have done. The Metzudah says that it says Zed Darkom, this is their way. So this is their way to glorify themselves and to put trust in their wealth. This is their way. Is it meaning that the pasuk, the chapter is continuing and talking about this? This is their way. He's going to give you the lesson closer to the end of the chapter of what our way should be. But this is their way, that they put their trust in their wealth. And the Sfarnu says that this is the reason they don't notice this. They don't notice that they're walking down a path that's like a fallacy. That's like living a false life. Why? Because Zedarkom, this is the way the previous generation did. This is the way they do. Zedarkom. And not only that, the end of the pasuk in the Mamleah says, and the next generation, bifiem, with their mouth, yirtzu. So the Mamlei says that with their mouth, they say that they want to do better, but they don't actualize on it. So that's also another problem, that sometimes people say, oh yeah, in previous generation, or I see this guy, he makes a lot of money, but he doesn't give tzedakah. I'm going to make a lot of money and give tzedakah. And then when they do, don't necessarily do it, or whatever it is. I'm always going to have time for my family, or I'm always going to have time to do a good deed. And then when it push comes to shove, they don't do it. So that's another way you could learn the end of the pasuk, b'achareyem, meaning and afterwards, when they get to that point, yirtzu, b'fiyem, with their mouth they say yirtzu, but it doesn't actualize.
One thing, Reb Label, if I may. So we're talking about sheep, how they follow each other. Sheep follow each other. It's normal. And he's making a mockery of them, because at the end he says, v'acharehem b'fihem yirtzu sela. When would you use a word like sela? You use a word like sela, omein sela, something good that'll last forever. Here they're saying sela like they think it's good. What their fathers did running after money, what their grandfathers did. It should only be like this for me, sela.
Right.
It's a mockery.
Right.
Use that word.
And sela also is like a finality. They're so stuck in it. Sela, it's like, that's it.
They pronounce their own. They pronounce their own prophecy, like they prophesize their own doom.
Right. Yeah. Good. Pasuk 15, Katzain, right? We were talking about like sheep. Like sheep, they end up in the grave, right? Like sheep go into the barn. Rashi says, sheep go into the barn. They all follow each other. They end up in the barn. So too, a person ends up in the grave. But the righteous will go, Shatum Avazim, V'yir Dubam. So he says, V'yir Dubam Yesharim. But the upright will dominate. When are the upright going to dominate? La Baiker, in the morning. So Rashi says that's referring to when Mashiach comes, that ultimately those who are the Shayim, the evildoers, they're going to go Lishoel, into the depths, into the grave, and you're not going to hear from them anymore. Not even going to know that they existed. They're not even going to be articles on Wikipedia, so to speak. But the righteous, they're only going down into the grave till Yom HaGeulah, until Mashiach comes, until the world to come. And the others, the Rishayim, the evildoers, even Suram, Levalis Sha'el, even their form, it disappears, it rots in the grave, and away from its mizvulai, away from its abode. And that's why Rashi explains it. The Sfarnu says that they prepare for themselves. There's something that they do to themselves, and they prepare for themselves ultimately an eternal loss. Pasuk number 16. But now he comes back around and he says, those who are listening to me, or as Rashi says, that the person who's the psalmist says, since I listen to myself, since I listen to my words, so Elikim Yifta Nafshi, Hashem will redeem my soul. He's talking about himself, but he's talking about himself in the form that, as Rashi says, that I listen to what I had to say. So Hashem will make sure that I will go on the straight and narrow. Hashem will redeem my neshama miyad sha'ol from the grave, from the depths. But not only that, ki yikacheni, he's going to lift me up. He's going to take me, Selah. He's going to take me onto and put me onto the straight path. So it's a beautiful Rashi, bringing it back to the pasuk of listening. That I'm not asking for everybody else to listen. Of course, everybody should listen. All nations of the world should listen to this chapter. But I am talking to myself. And if I talk to myself and I listen, so then Elikim Yifta Nafshi, Hashem will redeem my soul. The Mitzvah says, it says that Hashem will redeem me from the depths, from the grave, and Hashem will take me. Didn't we just say that everybody eventually gets to the grave, right? So he says, they have to recognize that he's talking about nafshi, about the soul, that Hashem will redeem my soul. It's not about the body. The body lives for a certain amount of years. And after that amount of years, the neshama lives on. Our soul lives on. And that's what he's referring to, that our soul lives on and our soul lives on forever. How does our soul live on forever? Why will our soul live on forever? Our soul lives on forever through the Torah and mitzvahs that we do here in this world. That's what gives our soul a life force after 120. The Arizal translates it a little bit differently, and the Arizal says that that Sheol is the depths. So it could mean the depths of the grave, but it could also mean the depths of Gehenna, the depths of purgatory. And that's the way the Arizal explains it, that Hashem, that because I listened to what I had to say, so to speak, and I listened and I made sure that there was meaning in my life and there was good deeds in my life, etc. So Hashem will save me from the depths of Gehenna, of purgatory. The Sfarnu says that Hashem will save me through tshuva that I've done, and it won't happen through amassing wealth. And therefore, so that's what that Hashem is going to save me through tshuva, and not like the rich people that think that it's through amassing wealth. And therefore, he continues the next pasuk, Al tira ki ashrish. So don't be worried. What does it mean? Don't fear if someone else becomes wealthy. You know, you see someone else all of a sudden, I'm working hard, and I could, I make a living, I could get by. But then I see this other guy that he becomes very wealthy. So the pasuk says altira. It's a very interesting way to put it. What do you mean? Don't worry that someone became. Why would I be worried that someone else became wealthy? Right? That what does it mean? Altira. So the Radak says that a person might come and say, one second, I daven, I learn, I do mitzvahs, I go to work. I'm not. Maybe Hashem is not looking at me. Maybe Hashem is not focusing on me. So the pasuk says no, and then the other guy down the block, and he all of a sudden struck wealth. He all of a sudden became very wealthy. Altira, don't make that calculation, because it won't take anything with him. That's not the point. It's not the point of the world. The point is not the wealth. And that's why don't worry that maybe Hashem is not listening to you, or Hashem is not. No, don't. That's not the calculation you should make. Don't worry if someone else becomes wealthy, or Kir Bekveit Beisa, or his household increases. This is something that Adak and the Sfarnu mentioned. The Sfarnu says a person might think that Hashem likes the rich person better. It's not so. On the contrary, it's a big nisayim being wealthy. It's not a simple thing to be wealthy and to do what Hashem wants. To be poor and do what Hashem wants, it's not so hard. It's not so hard, right? Yeah, you have to daven, you have to learn, you have to do a mitzvah. But to be wealthy and do what Hashem wants, it's a much bigger struggle. It's a much bigger struggle. I have no idea what that struggle is, because I have never been wealthy, and I don't think I'll ever be wealthy. So I have no idea that struggle. But I trust all the commentaries that say, and I've seen it everywhere, I've seen it written everywhere, that the struggle of Ashiris, the struggle of being wealthy, from a Jewish perspective, from doing the right thing, doing what Hashem wants, from a perspective of being wealthy, is much, much harder than the struggle of being poor. And by the way, poor, nobody should be poor. Hashem should bless everybody with what they need. Ashiris, wealth, is above and beyond what you need, right? And then it's a struggle, because then a person might come and say, hold on a second, I did so well because I'm so smart, or I did so well because Hashem really wants me to spend that money, not to give tzedakah, not to help somebody, right? There's other things that could come and cloud our judgment in that kind of scenario. But everybody should be blessed that they should have what they need, even a little bit more than what they need, that they could take care of somebody else, etc., etc. And then he continues, that when a person passes away, he won't take everything. So hakel means everything. All the commentaries right away say hakel means anything, not everything. He won't take anything, not that he won't take everything. The Sfarnu says that he won't take hakel everything. What's everything? That he won't take everything, because he won't take anything for the world to come. We don't take with us of the money, but the mitzvahs we do take with us. So what he doesn't take is anything from this world. Anything that belongs in the world to come, that he does take with him, and that's and his honor won't go. If someone doesn't live a life of things, of worrying about what's going to be in the world to come, not what's going on here in this world, so that when he passes away, he takes nothing with him. Right, you know the famous story, a very wealthy person, he was a miser, and he never gets stuck in. He was always amassing wealth and wealth. Someone asked him, "What are you gonna do when you pass away?" He says, "Don't worry, I have a plan for that too." So right before he passes away, he calls in three men of the cloth. He calls in a Muslim cleric, he calls in a Christian cleric, and he calls in the rabbi. And he says, "I have 3 sacks of gold coins, and I want that by my funeral, I want you to come, and each one of you should come and bury my gold coins with me." So figures, these are men of God. They're for sure going to listen, right? So sure enough, of course, they were there. And when it comes to the burial, the imam, the cleric comes and he says, I made a promise. So of course, I'm gonna put in this bag of coins. And then the Christian, comes and he says, I also made a promise, and a promise. Puts in the coins. The rabbi also comes and says, I made a promise, and I made a calculation that between these 3 bags of gold coins, there's about $100 million. He writes a check for $100 million and takes the 3 bags and leaves. When they might say you can't take anything, but after you pass away, you're not taking anything with you. That's the point of the whole chapter. Pasuk number 19. What's this evil wealthy person? So it's very sad the way it's like being portrayed, because really we don't know that many people that are such wealthy evil people, right? We don't, in today's world, we don't really have that so much. Baruch Hashem, people are not like that. But what does he do? When he's alive, he makes sure to praise himself, right? Or this wealthy person in his lifetime makes sure to praise himself. But if you want people to really praise you, meaning after 120 people should say, oh, this is a really good guy, he say tivlach, if you better yourself. If you work on bettering yourself in your lifetime, even after you pass away, people are going to have good things to say about you, right? Not that you praise yourself during your lifetime. No, better yourself during your lifetime, then others will have good things to say about you, right? On this pasuk, Rashi says that the Rasha, the evil one, he tells his soul, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. But others don't necessarily agree. But if you listen to me, meaning if you listen to the psalmist of this chapter, it says everyone will praise you if you straighten out your life during your lifetime. That's when everybody will praise you. And that's why Rashi learns this pasuk. Pasuk number 20, Tavei Ader Avesav. Rashi says, after you pass away and you meet previous generations in Gehenna. So Tavei Ader Avesav, right? We're talking about this, that it's coming like sheep, one generation after the next generation. So the next generation, you pass away, and where did you meet? You meet them in Gehenna. They didn't do anything positive. If someone didn't do anything positive, that they're going to see the light. They're not going to see the light. And as Radak says, that they won't see the light of tzidkus. They won't see the light of righteousness. And the chapter finishes, pasuk 21, Adam biyikar v'lo yavin nimshal kabemis nidmu. This is a repeat of verse number 13, that a person, man, biyikar, in his glory, but he doesn't understand. A person, this is Rashi says that really a person has a life set out for him, but lo yavin, he doesn't understand, and he chooses a life, the improper path, right? Lo yavin, the person that doesn't understand. The Sfarnu says that Adam, a person, Yikar, is very valuable. Adam Bikar is very valuable. Tehillim Elokim, a person was created in the image of God, right? But if he doesn't put in the effort, and Lo Yavin, he doesn't put in the effort to understand this ultimate truth of this chapter, the Chachma, the wisdom of this chapter, so Nimshal Kabeim is Nidmu. At the end of the day, it's like a quiet sheep that goes, follows. We could live a life of sheep following what this other person does. And if you hear someone else was successful, so we wanted to be like him, we wanted to do like him. Today, in today's day and age, in the day and age of social media, someone puts up an Instagram story, everybody's following them. Someone's playing with this toy, everybody's following them. Someone's playing with that toy, so everybody's following, right? We became literally like sheep. Comes this chapter in Tehillim and says we should recognize what's important things in life, and we should follow those important things. What's important? The study of Torah, the doing of mitzvahs, the good deeds, what we do for others, what we do for others. And others, by the way, is other human beings and also for Hashem, right? So when we do a mitzvah for Hashem, when we do a mitzvah helping a fellow person, a neighbor, a friend, etc., we help somebody else. Oh, then we recognize what's important in life, and that is what's going to literally give us a name that we, even after 120, will be remembered. But not only that will be remembered, our neshama will live on. And with that, we finish Kapitel Memtes, chapter 49. Any questions?